question. Yeah.
They'll let us know when the cameras roll out.
Just start, you tell us your name, where you were born, when.
Okay, we're rolling.
Okay.
All right. So my name is Rachel Rosmarin. They call me Lillian. It's my second name. I was born in Poland, in town Sosnowiec, 1923. It started with the news that the war broke out, which at that you want.
Could you tell us a little bit about your family?
My family. I was brought up in a well-to-do family, attending a private school. Our life was very normal and a happy one. Well, I was raised with brothers and sisters, were 8 children, in an Orthodox home, observant, with family living around us in the distance of few blocks away. My grandparents were very well-known people. They were like the pioneers of the town, which goes back probably the 4th generation, and the family's name was Fischer. So growing up was not difficult for me because we never knew what it is a hardship. Very comfortable and attending private schools, which I am comparing today to my grandchildren or my children were approximately brought up in the same environment.
Can you tell us a little bit about what your father did? Your mother?
We owned a textile store, which was basically run by my mother, and my father had outside business, which was associated with a steel mill till the time that the war broke out. In 1938, my parents built the apartment building, which was finished. We moved in like 3 months before the war broke out. And we lived there very comfortably till the day that one day we got up. I remember this vividly because it was like the end of our summer vacation of school. Being very young and not experienced, we really didn't know what it means going to war or being at war, especially having the war with Germans. But it didn't take long that we found out, and it was a tragic beginning, like a change of our lives.
How did you first hear about the war? What are your first memories?
I went to my grandparents' store, which was 2 blocks away from the place we lived, and the morning paper came in, and I remember vividly my aunt, which was in school too at that time, she was a young person, she just waved the paper, she said, "We have it. The war is there. We have the war." Remembering what my grandma was telling me about the First World War, you know, it sounded so remote to us, but I didn't realize that we are just on board or at the border with Germany. It didn't take too long, but we started to feel the impact of the invasion.
How did you feel the impact? What was your first awareness?
First of all, the day the war was declared, we people being so close, like half an hour away from the German border, we felt it in a way that especially Jews, everybody was scared, petrified, knowing what was going on in Germany in 1938, right before they came into Poland. So the first thing I remember, my father said to my mother, let's pack and take the children away from here, from the border, because we didn't know what's going to be. So at night we packed, we hired a, the locomotion was very poor and people were scared. We could hire 2 horses and a buggy or whatever it was, I don't remember. And we packed whatever we grabbed and just we went like this. We're traveling for 2-3 days. And at that time, I had a little sister which was born May 38, which made her like 3 or 4 months when we started to run. So she had a little, Polish girl that she was attending her. And in the slippers, she just went with us. She went because she couldn't part from, she was always in the household. So she went. We were traveling for quite a few days till I don't know how we reached the town, little village that my grandparents were from, and we wind up in a house, I couldn't call a house, it was a very primitive, I never encountered like a country, they live like country people in a small one family home. And we came in, I never saw her in my life, and we stayed for quite a few days there till we knew that the Germans are already in our town, and we couldn't, we're being a big family without any proper accommodation, and there was no any source of providing food or whatever, everything we left behind. My father decided that it's time to go back, because either there or at home or here in the little village, it's just the same. And the trip back was very tragic, because the Germans were all over already. Whenever they called, there were a lot of people, they ran away. And whomever they could hold hands on, we had to go back through a bridge, and whoever they called the Jews, they were drowning them. So the guy that was taking us back realized what's going on, and for some reason, unexpected reason, because they were not that friendly to Jews, the Polish people, he just took pity with us, and he said to my father, I wouldn't suggest that you at this point go back. We'd rather stay somewhere overnight, maybe by tomorrow. There would be a better time to go back with your children. So we did. We went to a farm, and we slept over the night on the ground, on straw, on the floor. And the next day, my father met a person, a Polish man that he knew, that he was in business with, and he took a bicycle and he went ahead like a few kilometers to just to look as a lookout. If the roads are clean, we can pass. And it took us, normally should take us 7 or 8 hours. It took us maybe 3 days to get back. And as we are approaching the city, somebody told us that they are taking all the Orthodox Jews, and whoever wears a beard shaving them or pulling the hair out or something like this. My father had a little, as you will see at the picture, and so we put him a scarf around his head, and we just covered him out with a blanket. That's how we went back to our house, to our apartment.
Do you remember the first impressions as you came back into your
Right,
town after having
right.
been away?
The first night we came, it was like a block and a half away in our neighborhood. It was a beautiful synagogue. Suddenly we're asleep, and here like an explosion. And we were scared. We thought they are dropping bombs when you are a child, this age, you don't realize what's, what is in store for us. And then we saw a big flames and a big fire and screams. And it was the first experience that I had, that the feeling what Germans are capable of, or what their intentions are. And that evening the synagogue went in flames. There was, the next morning, it was only the foundation with ashes. And whatever was in it, everything went into the flames. That was the first experience. And later on, my life as a I cannot say that I can call myself a teenager. I didn't know, the teenager is a label in this country. But to us, I was being 14, I felt very, up to date at that time, but for the present time, very immature, because we didn't realize many things. And at the same time, I started to feel that the obligation on me as oldest from the daughters, that to take part in the household and in helping around, because we used to have Polish maids. They left us right away. And from then on, no school. And it was a very hard life on us, having all the children home. And so my mother, little by little, started to hire private teachers to come into the house and just to give us a little bit incentive in life, which it proved later on to be very helpful, because between those things I was very artistic inclined. I loved sewing and drawing and doing things with my hands. So I took courses in sewing, and then I took between them English language, which later on was very helpful for me.
Did your neighbors' attitudes, your Polish neighbors' attitudes, change toward you at that point, or had there been?
About my Polish neighbors, I believe whenever you will ask me, if you will wake me at night, you will hear from me the same and very sad stories. Till the Germans came, we suffered a lot from the Polacks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any compassion for them.
Mm-hmm.
They were very instrumental to the Germans,
Mm-hmm.
and everything what the Germans wanted to do to the Jews, they didn't have any problems with the Polak. They were always willing and always ready.
Mm-hmm.
So the first experience we have after we lived in a very beautiful new building, as the Germans came in and took offices in our town, so the first plan was to empty the newer accommodations, the more comfortable accommodations for the German personnel, which we got a notice that all the neighbors have to remove themselves from the apartments in the first few days after the occupation, after they occupied our town. And we were the last to leave. Going back to the Polacks, we had a superintendent. She was a woman without a husband, which my father hired her because he had pity on her. She had smaller children and she couldn't get work. He took her to the house to just keep the house clean, the hallways and so forth. And we gave employment to the woman. They helped in the household or whatever my father could provide or help them out. The minute all the Jewish neighbors left, our tenants left, we were left as a one family, were allowed, because we were the landlords, to stay by the Germans. This woman did it created a lot of problems for us. She spilled water during the night, dirty water, or threw garbage in the hallways in front of our doors. And then she came up. She went to the German, whoever was at that time in charge of the house, telling the Jews are doing it. So my father knew that she could create a lot of problems at her. We just moved out one night. We just packed and moved. We got a very meager accommodation because they were at the time that already started to put the Jewish family in a special part of the town that just to squeeze them. They had prepared a plan how to little by little just get rid of the Jews, and probably that was the first stage of taking the Jewish family from their accommodations and squeeze them in a certain quarters. And
They made a ghetto?
at that time, they didn't call it a ghetto. They call it a Jewish quarters or whatever. I didn't even know what a ghetto meant. I knew from the history books that Jews used to be in a ghetto, but I couldn't imagine what is it to be in a ghetto. But being in this Jewish quarter didn't take a long time. From there they were pushed in to a specifically prepared out of town, from both towns, my town Sosnovitz and my husband Benjin. They made in between those two towns, like a countryside, little very primitive lodging, and they squeezed. Big family like ours could get just one bedroom and a little kitchen from a accommodation from a farmers. They took them to to the town, and they pushed all the Jews, and this was called officially a ghetto, Jewish ghetto.
What was life like in this ghetto? How did daily life go?
It was very hard because we all were home. There was no school, and there was no kindergartens for the small children. And food, we were struggling because everything was rationed, bread and milk and so on. And our family, I just want to bring in, was very important. Before we went to the ghetto, my father opened a factory, batteries, which my oldest brother, for some reason, he was playing around, wanted to find out how it's done, how it's being, to initiate, to start something, because they took our business away. I didn't mention before we went to the ghetto, all the Jewish business was taken away. First they put a German manager to it, and later, one day we came, there was a notice that that's it, it's closed. And the next day they came with the trucks and they empty out everything. So we're left without any income. So my brother came in with the idea. He said, it's dark, my oldest one, which he's alive. It's during the war, we couldn't use lights during the night. Everything was dark. And batteries were very much in demand. And he started to investigate how it's being made, till he created, and one night he came up and he said, it's lighting, I can use it. And we started, my father just took very much interest, and we opened a factory. And we started to do at home. And as we were working on it, one day we had a visit from a German officer, or whoever it was, I don't remember, in a uniform. And he took a great interest in it. And he said, we are in Germany, we have a shortage in it, because they needed it very much. And so the army needed it. And he asked my father if he could, if he will get a bigger accommodation, if we can produce more. So it was a wonderful idea. At that time he went to the Jewish committee, which every town had it, like and he told them the story. They were delighted, because this way we could save some people being sent away, and which my father did was very noble. I will come back to this point. There was a group of children which were left without parents already. The parents were sent away. They were in the group below 12, it was like 11, 10, that they were to work, they were too young, and to send away, they were like in hiding constantly for school. There was no school. They lived like in the street without any foothold, any place. So my father got an idea. He just gathered those children. There were a group maybe of 20, and he went again to the Jewish committee. He said, this is the type of work that those children could do, and I would gladly work out papers for them, and let's help them. Maybe we can save them. So they agreed too, because they were glad that somebody takes over a problem like this. And they started to work. They were very, very productive. And when he asked from the German government, I mean the local government, for papers for those children not to be sent away for children like this, there was no labor camps, were right away Auschwitz or gas chamber. So they said they don't believe that those children can be productive. They sent over a group of 4 or 5 German in uniforms. I cannot just say who were they, what the rank, and they were watching those children working, and they were amazed. So they issued for those children papers, working papers, and they survived to the last minute, as long as we stayed in the city before we shipped away. And that time they were 2 years old already, and some of them made through camps, and they are survivors in Israel. And being Greece, I just returned a week ago, and in front of a few thousand people, they came a group of children, and they acknowledged and they paid like homage to my father because they are survived, which was a very in front of a few thousand people. It was a very moving story. Mm-hmm. And then let's go back to the ghetto life, which was terrible. Mm-hmm. Firstly, every family, the minute we moved in, we knew what's the future, what it's in store. Absolutely, because in between, they used to during the night, especially during the night, go to the Jewish homes and take away able people to work. It started like to work, and they collected them across our building. There was a new school, a Jewish school, like a vocational school, and they changed this to a gathering place for those people in transit. I mean, which they grab in the street and they put to camps or whatever. So there was a story that it's very interesting. I want to bring points that it's vivid in my memory. I never talked about this. When my father built this building, we are lucky because he knew about this. He was supervising the building. So between the roof of the attic, which I mentioned to you, and the roof of the house, there was a space. You could not sit there, you cannot walk there, but you can move in and lay flat. So
this was the battery factory, or
no,
this was the apartment house?
This was the apartment house. The battery factory came a little later, after we moved out from our house. So I remember me and my 2 younger sisters and my brothers, the 2 older brothers, who were like 4 children in the age group that they could grab, at that point in time, they could grab us if we'll be able to work to the camp, to work in camp. And if they would grab somebody younger, meanwhile they left with their parents. So like 4 of us, my 2 older brothers and me and my younger sister, many times in the nightgowns, winter time, we didn't even have a chance to grab a coat. And we heard a commotion. My father always made sure that the front entrance door to the house was good closed till they hear to open, and he carried the keys. He took away from the superintendent the keys because everybody had a key to the house, and he made sure that we ran. He took us once during the day, and he showed us. We had a little ladder there. He showed us how to get there, and that's why we left a blanket there. And when there was any commotion, many times we went just and stay overnight without any good reason, just because it was noise or there were too much movement in the street. So we went there and slept over the night. I don't know what the nights were horrible. During the day we felt we have more freedom of movements, more place to run to, but during the night, and we knew that we cannot count on any Polish neighbors because they were collaborating all the way with the Germans. That we had two enemies to hide from, which was terrible. And so that was our first hiding place, which I recollect very vividly. And then I'm switching from one situation to another, but to compare in the ghetto hiding. The minute we moved into this place, it was one story, actually the ground floor and the first floor, which we occupied upstairs, one bedroom and a kitchen, our whole family. And on top of everything, some members of family moved in with us. One aunt, which the uncle was taken to a camp, and later on, my not the grandparents, but my husband's aunt and uncle, because we made every Jewish family had to have a bunker. You know, if it's a bunker, the hiding place, and there were invention of double walls or blocked out rooms covered up with a small hole that you just have enough room to go into, or a sub-basement, which was, in our case, was a sub-basement. It was a basement, and from this basement, at night, we dig a very big hole, you know, and maybe it was extension of some hidden hole or hidden in case of, you know, sort of a hiding in case of Germans going and sweeping again this place and grabbing people to whatever. It was at one weekend night. At that time I was engaged to my husband, Jack, which you met before. And we went to visit his sister 2 houses away in the same neighborhood, because this was always connected. Everything was connected. As the evening came, you know, was coming in, we decided we want to go back because you cannot use any lights outside. So we heard noises, and there was some air of very tense outside, and dogs barking, and we knew what's coming with it. So we ran back, and matter of fact, an hour later, 2 hours later, the whole place, the whole ghetto was lit up with the spotlights, and you hear shots, dogs barking, Germans talking. And since we live close by the German border, I knew German and most of the people. I had it in school as a language, you know. So it was not strange, those outcries or comments coming from the Germans. So we just went into hiding in the other bunker, which I husband's sister had in her place. At that time, we had maybe 20 or 25 people from one building in the same bunker. It was Saturday night, and we stayed till the next morning. It was very early hours. We knew that something is going, because Jewish families, they organized this way that they sent out, it was like how you call it, just, you know, people were watching, like watchmen, let's say. They designated according to the list. Everybody had few hours to stay outside and just to feel the air and see if it's not going, something is not going on. And one of those friends came in. He said, "People, it's no good. Something is going on. I don't know what, but I hear a lot of screams, and I know from around us, people are being taken away from their homes, children screaming, crying." Being that we're already in the bunker, he came in too, we locked it, and we stayed there. But to the Germans, it was nothing new, our bunker. We felt just safe for a while, because it was like a last hope for us, you know, something to hold on the bunker. From there on, you couldn't go any place. And in the morning hours, Sunday, which was September, I believe the 3rd, September the 3rd, we heard a lot of noise outside. You know, we heard the steps above us, and boots marching, going back and forth, since they didn't find anybody in the whole building. It was to them a very natural thing from the previous experience, that they have to look for the hiding place where the Jews hid. And it didn't take them long, maybe 20 minutes or so. From the minute we heard them coming, the bunker was open. And, you know, the older people or the stronger people helped the younger one, the children, to get first out, because it was something you have to let yourself in, and then it was an art to get out from there. And later on, before I came out with my husband at that time, he was my fiancé, a big cloth or with gasoline or something lit it up, you know, a fire. I saw flames coming into the bunker. What they wanted to make sure nobody's left there, so they dropped something, paper or something, you know, made a fire. They lit something, probably clothes or some, dropped into the bunker. And we saw that there's no way out, we have to get out. And that was the last thing that I left behind, the memory from my hometown. And we were taken on the trucks.
At that time, did you have any idea where you were going? Did you mention?
Yes.
Yeah.
We did sort of, because my husband, being that he had a big factory and he was managing it, he had Germans running the place, so they talked between themselves what's being done to Jews, and he knew exactly where we are heading. But being that we were like 30 kilometers away from Auschwitz, which is probably around 18 or 20 miles away, you see the stories, they came back, nobody believed this. How could you believe, living normally, that one human being that people are capable taking children and sick and pregnant women and whoever, living souls, and put alive on, or gas them or burn them. So even the rumors were there. But, you know, Jews, by going back to their history, they always live with great optimism. And no matter how horrible their life is for them, they always believe tomorrow will be better. And this was the situation with us. And this belief and this fight kept me alive personally, because I always said, another horrible day, maybe tomorrow will be better. And maybe that's what helped me to go through these horrible times. About being a little bit optimistic, I cannot say, because I am sure there were many more people as optimistic as me and didn't survive. It's just coincidence. I don't know how it called, but it was very hard to believe. And then from there, they took us to a ramp, and we were loaded in the cattle cars to a train. There were more people. We were packed like sardines in a can. The 1 hour trip, was hard to survive. And there were people, they tried to escape, which I don't know. It didn't cross my mind. I was too young, not as strong, not without any tools taken during the night away from bed. Most of the people were not, excuse me, being able, even if I would take something, a hammer with me, if I would be given time, I would risk my life to kill a German, to kill anybody who would come my way to take away my life. I would do it to do it to the other person. But let me just say one thing. Since you videotaped me, this is not only for the young people that maybe one day will listen to my testimony, but to my own children. Sometimes people say, how you let yourself led, just to, like sheep to the slaughter. People cannot comprehend that Germany was a mighty country. They were for years preparing to send to war. France, a great country, couldn't withstand the power of the Germans. Poland, Czechoslovakia, all the European countries. They were mighty countries with armies, with tools to fight. First of all, I'm going into this, but I believe there's a very important point to stress. What they did to the Jewish people especially, first of all, they robbed them from the heads of the families. All the fathers were taken away to the so-called, either they were killed in the streets or they were taken to camps. There were household, just mother and small children. Then what they did, they took the children, the working age group, 21, 22, or 25 till 14. They were taken away. There was left a family with a mother, with the small children, without enough food to provide for the families, with nothing to do, nowhere to go, just sit and wait for a miracle to happen. The miracle didn't come. Nobody had pity with them, not even the next door neighbor that you live normally, you can sometimes lean or count on them. There was no one there. And there were such a horrible stories about living in a situation like this, in a country that you live through between you enemies, and then you encounter a very big enemy that you just powerless. How can me, being 14 years old, fight back? I would, if I would be given a chance, if I would come in contact with them, I definitely would. If I had a gun, I would shoot them. Even my life was not important to me, because firstly, I was brought up in an organization, in a scout organization, which being honorable meant a lot. And I felt at this point, being honorable, I should have do something, just to kill the enemy, to do something. I would gladly do. There was a resistance from part of friends of mine. The next day they were killed. They came into a German office. They killed 2 Germans. They were hanged the next day. But we were idolizing them. That was the attitude. You just had a good attitude, but you cannot do anything. You cannot. You could not. If you would have somebody to lean back, Polish neighbors, that we know we could have support, any moral support. Go, we help you, we give you with this, we help you with a gun. Everything was taken away from us. They started with our furs, and they started with our jewelry. They started with our contents of our house, with our business. There was not even a means people, able people. There was no private sectors, working places that one could go and earn a decent living. We had to live like beggars. From the coupons, rations that we got, that was the life story. And going back now, when they send us out, take a masses of women and children and put on trucks and bring into cattle cars with Germans, with guns, dogs, wild dogs. The German dogs, they are known for it. And surrounded with this. What one can do?
Who was on the transport with you? Anyone from your family?
You see, my husband, and there were the sister, my husband's sister, which I was taken from her apartment, and another younger sister. We were the first one to see Auschwitz. The train were very slow, and we brought few dead people, half dead, because they were trying. Some other people were trying, I don't know, the break. Everything was locked and closed with iron bars. I don't know whether they tried to open a hole in the bottom, on the floors, and just go this way. Maybe 1 or 2 succeeded to run away, but there were a lot of people that got killed. And I still remember there was a beautiful young woman that was shot. They were shooting into every car, and she was, when they brought her in, matter of fact, I had to take her down with somebody else. She was half alive, half dead. I don't know what to say, half alive or half dead. And we had to put her down on the ground, and that's the last scene I had. Her eyes were still moving around. And that was the last thing what I saw from her. And we came after 1 hour, 2 hours. It was like a year. The time was very long. The trip was very short, but the time was terrible long. We realized first was the sign Birkenau, because Auschwitz was removed a little bit. The actual big camp was in Birkenau. And when I looked around, I saw thousands of people, and a lot of them I knew, my friends, my school friends. And we didn't know what's going on. And they had trucks waiting there. And they started to just separate. Me and my husband, it took us a very long time to say goodbye to each other. I mentioned to you this. We're engaged not long before. We're a young, beautiful couple. And we just saw that our lives just ending. And I didn't care whatever German was screaming or yelling, go left, go right. We just stood there, like frozen. We couldn't separate. And as I mentioned to you, this, I don't know who was it, but I know later on, I knew that was Mengele, because later on I had the sort of a pleasure. I had encountered him on a few occasions. I knew I could recognize him. He came over. he separated us. And he took me first on the right side, and my husband to the left side. I started the column of women that was sent to camp, and he, the man, when I saw him separated, I didn't know what's going to happen because we didn't have any idea what the procedures are. But then I saw they started to put the old woman and the small children on the trucks. And I didn't see anybody from my immediate family because I was not in the ghetto from my hometown. It was on the border. I went to visit, as I mentioned, Saturday night to see my husband's sister, and we stayed over because we couldn't go back anymore. So I saw the people. I have been in bunker with them, putting on, there were a lot of children and all the people putting on the trucks. So I understood that this fate is a different one. So we tried just to hold on to the place we stayed because we entertained the idea we might be being that the old young people are being taken away. We didn't know where to camps, or we didn't realize the whole setup which we encountered few minutes later. And as I mentioned, those two sisters from my husband, they were put away to the side on the truck. And I motioned to them, realizing what's this. I pointed to them, they tried to sneak to our side, which they did. One was taken back, and then after the group got larger, she did it again, and she stayed with us. And there were, from the whole few thousand people, 300 women. We just put 5 in a row, and a column. They counted 300, that was it. And with men it was, I cannot recall, I don't know if my husband mentioned either 2 or the same amount. And they marched it away, us away. And those people, they didn't have a long trip to make because it was a few minutes away, which I realized later being in camp. It was a very short trip to the crematorium. We never heard from them. We heard only screams and cries, and later it was very quiet. So even being in camp, as we came in, and I saw the chimneys going in a full speed, I asked people, they have been before me and stayed there a long time, a year before, 6 months. I asked them, and they had sort of a way to avoiding the answers. What's going on there? They used to say, this is the bakery for the camp. This is this. No one, I can recall anyone, told us that they are burning people alive, that they are guessing. And being there, and even in back of my mind, crossed my mind, could be this? I said, no. How could it be taking, I couldn't even comprehend the whole situation. And I was told it's a bakery. I just wanted to believe this. I couldn't make myself believe differently. And life started. And the paradox of it all, we marched into the camp. Here you encountered with an orchestra, people playing, a band composed of women dressed in the camp uniform, the stripe, good looking, and just playing. And a big sign in front of the entrance when we came to Arbeit macht frei, which means in German, the work makes you free. You thought you going in someplace, that will take you, will work, and I visualized that all those people were taken away to some sort of village. They will be taking care, the older and the children. I didn't want to believe. And you know who made me aware of it? The Polish inmates. They were there for political reason or for criminal reason. They were just very blank, and they were enjoying making the statements. You know who is burning there? You people, you Jews. That's where you wind up, going up in flames. That's our neighbors. That's our people that I grew up with and live with. So we're like 1 month, 4 weeks on a quarantine. I don't know why they call it. We didn't do anything, but we linger around. And we got up 3 o'clock in the morning. We were taken to the appel. We were standing there for hours. It was already in the fall. The weather was cool. We were given a very meager clothing without overdressing, no coats, no sweaters. Later we were told, because we are so close away from home, like 30 kilometers, they were afraid that we might run back. So they just a little summer dress, and what I remember, we got those wooden shoes, no stocking, nothing. And one day on the appeal, the ground was very muddy, and I just got in with the wooden shoe. I couldn't get out it anymore, and to get another one, there was no way. So when we had to stay in appel, I asked the girl next to me, let me just lean my barefoot on your wooden shoe, not to be. I was with one shoe left. That was the 4 weeks we spent on a quarantine, and in between they came and they started there were some young people came with me. Some of them were not feeling well or sick, and they were taken away before they selected from the whole group again a group out of this, and they call it in the working camp, which was a step away. It was everything with electric wires, which we couldn't just walk freely. You could not move freely. Just you were confined to one place surrounded with electric wire. You have to stay there. And after 4 weeks, we were taken in to the different camp. And one of those days, I have to mention, either I saw my mother or somebody told me that my mother is there. And I found out later by encountering people that were hidden in with my mother, which is the same. I knew what happened. That my family, my mother, I found 2 days later. They were taken. I was taken Sunday morning. They were taken Tuesday morning. The Monday transports to clean up the ghetto. Directly, there was no survivors. Everybody went right to crematoriums. But Tuesday, luckily, my parents, the hiding place was discovered Tuesday morning. And my mother gave her age that time 35, so she was spared. She came in, but she had with her 3 young children, which they were taken away. I have the pictures here. I don't know if I should show you now or later. What? I would like to show you. As they were taking out my parents from the bunker, my brother was shot. He was shot. I was told by my parents that it was very, very hot in the bunker. And it was underneath the place that we used to live, and they opened a station, a German post there. And what they did, there were children and older people, and my grandfather was there. And he said that he's short of bread. So he opened one brick. There was one brick prepared open for air, but there were so many people stuffed there. So one family was a small child, started to cry, and the mother put a pillow on it. He said, I cannot do it to give out the whole. There were 20-some people. And she put the pillow on the child, was suffocated. And then there was no air, and the posts were going back and front. So he tried to pull out one more brick to have more air. And the German outside saw the movement. He started to shoot into the bunker, and he was the first one to be hurt. When they discovered, they saw this movement, started to shoot in. There were a few more people that died that time. And the horrible story is they had to take him out, my parents, and bring him out and leave him like this. He was not dead yet. We never saw him. Such a beautiful person.
How old was he?
21.
21.
That's his picture. I don't know if you took it.
Yeah.
They covered him with a tallis, the prayer shawl, and they left him like this on the in the courtyard. And that's what my mother told me. And this, my sister, she was, I believe, 11, and my brother was 9. I don't know.
You hold them next to each other.
And I have one more child, which was born shortly before the war broke out. She was 3 months old. They took away those children from her. I don't know how she could survive this. I don't know. Do I hold as well?
Yeah, I got it.
And then I found out my grandmother had a very horrible death. She was shot too in a bunker, this one. She was eaten up by mice. She was left alone like this. And you have to live this memories there. Sorry. When I found out that my mother is on camp, she was not in the same place. I did everything was possible, which was impossible. I managed to get her out. She was in a barrack that they were working very, very hard. I had my 2 aunts there. And when I found that she was carrying very parts of a building of barracks, barefoot, the first things I took off in the evening after the appel, I took off my shoes, which I bought for my portion of bread, which I got for 24 hours. I bought my pair of shoes, not to wear those wooden shoes because they were killing my legs. And when I saw my mother, I came after the appel to her block when I discovered she's there. And the first thing what I took off my shoes, I gave her my shoes. And I went to the woman that was in charge on my block when I was, and luckily she had a mother too, but she was in charge of she was a Häftling, they call it, a person from Czechoslovakia, which she was already for 2 years in Auschwitz. She was the pioneer. They had a horrible time. They were by the building of the camp. And somehow I convinced her and I begged her. I said, I just came with her to ask you a very big favor. You understand me because you have a mother here. I found my mother and I'm the only one from 8 children. So far I know I survived. If she can help me to get my mother to my block, that I should be able to be with her. She promised and she helped me. And I took her over. And from this day on, it was like, a very supportive thing for both of us. I felt at this point that not everybody is wiped out. I know that the fate of my 4 younger siblings, but the older one, I know about my older brother. The rest of them I didn't know. So at least having my mother, I felt like I'm a child again, and somebody to lean on. And she felt, even if she was in a terrible state, emotional state, because losing so very shortly, she knew what happened to the younger children. The youngest was 3 years old at that time. It was, and knowing what the rest family, her sisters and the children of her family with parents, what happened to all of them. So she, by finding me there, it was to her like just the heaven open. She was holding on to me, and I said, look, we have to make the best of it.